Thank you for joining us for our Maximize Your Sales Efforts webinar series, pop-up webinar series, meeting the sessions that you're attending today won't be around forever, so make sure that you listen, take action, and reach out. I'm Dion Major, founder, CEO of Inside Sales by Design, and joined with my very good friend and sister, Lauren Harbeck. She is joining us with 25 years of experience in frontline operations. She is also engaged and enrolled in jujitsu classes. So I feel pretty confident whenever I go out with her and my husband. Like, I feel pretty safe at the end of the day. So love having her here. She is a senior advisor now as well with Inside Sales by Design. And we are excited to have her expertise, her experience. And with that, Lauren, I am going to let you take it away and talk us through financials on the fly.
Awesome. I am super excited to be giving this presentation today. I think financials can be such a scary subject sometimes. People don't want to touch it. Maybe it's not in their wheelhouse, or they think of those folks up on Wall Street in suits and stock markets, and maybe it just seems a little untouchable. So today we're going to make this subject a little touchable and relatable to just the everyday leader in business. And that's what I hope to share with everybody today. And hopefully give everybody an opportunity to be more comfortable with the idea of managing through financials and what that looks like to you in business, and how frontline operational tactics can help you. So we're going to be focused on 3 key points today: being realistic, being ready, and being resourceful. So here are some numbers for frontline operations that we deal with on a daily basis. I'm not going to read all of these statistics to you, but some of the key ones here: we have an average of a 75% turnover in restaurant operations. Our profit margins are dwindling. We're down to the 4 to 7% range. It can cost us up to $5,000 on average to train an hourly associate, $15,000, $24,000 at my company to train a manager. These are staggering numbers. And at the end of the day, you could feel like you're going into battle every single day to try and manage through all this. It's crazy, right? You have to be ready for anything. But if you are ready for anything, you will be successful. So today, like I said, those 3 key points. For the being realistic component, we're going to focus on selling in the real world. With a turnover rate of over 75%, how do you train your associates and train people to sell quickly and effectively to drive top line revenue? P&L disaster relief, staying ready and aware. Don't let your P&L run on autopilot. I've seen leaders do this. Never really good. Using all your resources to drive success, right? It's not untouchable. You can drive financial success no matter where you are in your leadership journey if you tap into all your resources and you're ready, and it's okay to ask for help is really what we're going to focus on in that component.
Yep. Lauren, the other thing I hear you saying is be proactive, right? Don't let things happen to you. Be proactive and get ahead of it. I love that. And again, I just think that's a great message. So go ahead. Thanks. Please keep going.
I love it. 100%, right? If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. I had a chef tell us that every single day. And I loved it. I love that idea. So top line sales, right? Imagine this scenario. You have to train someone how to sell something, but they can't use the product. They can't experience the product. And the topic of this product has thousands of books, videos. It's incredibly complex. Another wrench in the gears, right? You have 5 days to do it. But you're not only just training this product, you have to train them on 4 pages of other products, as well as culture, skills, and how to run their day to day. So think that through. What are some immediate thoughts you might think through in this situation? Maybe you think it's impossible. Maybe you're like, that is crazy, Laura. There is no way that can be successful in frontline operations. But really think through this process and understand that in frontline operations, we deal with this every day. We have a 70% turnover rate, over 70% on the average. So dealing with a 19-year-old server who can't drink wine, can't experience ordering a bottle of wine in a restaurant, but having to learn 100 wines in 5 days, and they have to be able to sell it to your guests. They have to be able to talk about it, and they have to feel comfortable enough not only to sell it, but to open these bottles that are $600, $700, $800 plus bottles. I don't think you've lived until you've seen a 19-year-old open their first $600 bottle of wine, right? It's crazy. My first bottle of wine, I was shaking. I was at the table, and I think it was white Zinfandel, to be honest. It could have been a screw top, but I was like shaking. It's
Yeah.
terrifying, right? So how do you break this down? And how do you effectively train somebody in 5 days to be confident to sell? And what does that really look like? And me and my colleague set out to answer this question, and we found a step-by-step process that worked. It took a while, but it worked, and it was great. And this is where it started, right? So you have to remember that the closer you get to the consumer in the selling process, the more relatable you need to be. So I think about these two situations: perfume and cologne commercials. Anybody knows that these are just bizarre, right? There's horses and ball gowns, and they're coming out of pools and dress. It's weird, right? And half the time you don't even know what the commercial is until the end. And um, that's not what the experience is when you go to the store. So
Right.
this is how it needs to become more relatable. You don't walk into Ulta and see a horse and a lady in a ball gown, right?
You see a very organized store. Yeah.
They're curious to see what you like. Maybe there's a cool bottle on the shelf that draws your attention. Maybe there's a specific maker of a perfume that you can relate to. So that's what I mean by getting more relatable to the consumer the closer you get to them. Same in wine sales. I don't know how many of you have seen a wine tech sheet, but they are almost ridiculous. They tell you things like it tastes like the bottom of an ashtray or scents of shoe leather. And it is bizarre. Boysenberry pie and cassis. I don't eat boysenberry pie. I don't know about anybody else in this room, but I wouldn't even know what that tastes like. Um,
Totally.
and that works. They get paid a lot of money at these wineries to use that tactic. But what we're going to focus on is how do we sell in the real world, right? How do we remove ourselves from this product training and this product selling at this high level that we can get lost in? And too often when we're trying to train people in our business to sell, we're not starting with the end in mind. And Deanna and I are big on that. She is huge about that and talks about it all the time. And by starting with the end in mind and by thinking about, hey, what kind of conversation does my employee need to have with the consumer, customer, client, whatever verbiage you use, that would make sense, right? What is the consumer looking for, and what do they really need to know to confidently hold that conversation?
Yep.
And this 4-step process, regardless of the product, regardless of the experience, will help anybody make selling in the real world possible for your team. Just like we took that 19-year-old server and trained him on 100 wines, which we didn't train 100 wines, and we'll dive into that. But we made them confident and we increased sales in a short amount of time. So step 1, right? We need to identify what they realistically need to know to have a confident conversation. So what does that mean for us? We'll just keep using the wine situation. We weren't going to have sommeliers in 5 days. That's completely unrealistic. Take the tech sheet, shred them, throw them away. I don't need them talking about shoe leather and ashtrays, and I don't need them selling a fruit basket, right? Like I needed them to have a great overall knowledge. And once I identified that, I could move on. Now I'm not lost in this world of wine where I'm like, learn everything.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and
Yep.
now we're in a realistic situation. Now I'm like, okay, to confidently be able to sell wine, I need you to know some basic things on varietals, things like that, and
Yep.
so on. Step 2, identify your audience and how to connect. Make it personal. Okay. Oftentimes the relatable component and the relatable information, and I'm saying like fun facts about your product, fun facts about the company, relatable information about the company. Oftentimes that becomes far more important than the product knowledge itself, because people can relate to that, and
Yep.
people want to be able to relate to something. They want it to be personal to them. They want a connection. We've got to take that scripted out of it.
Yep.
Step 3, understand what your team needs to know. And now that you know what they need to know, break it into 3 key areas. Period. 3. That's it.
Yep.
List 3. This keeps you on track. You're not going to go down a rabbit hole if you have 3 key areas. That's what we did in our selling wine training. We focused on 3 key areas and how all these thousands of varietals of wine fell into these buckets. And what that meant if they saw oak aged, right? We talked about oak to age. That was one of our key areas. Well, that covered thousands of wines. Now I
Right.
wasn't training labels. Now I wasn't being super specific, but I was giving them something to say, oak age. I know what that means,
Yep.
right? And I know what that means for the wine.
Yep.
Step
I love that.
4, follow up ongoing training. Now you need
Amen.
to not yeah, don't keep them
Reinforce.
where they're at. Don't keep them where they're at. So
Yeah.
in our world, right, what that looks like is we're constantly trying new wines. We're bringing wine reps in. We're constantly, at this point, probably putting some tech sheets in front of them and letting them look at some of those more complicated tasting notes and soil levels and things like that. But these 4 steps, and you can follow them in detail. I know we went over them very quickly here, but we have a worksheet that if you register for this webinar that you'll be able to use. And if
Yep.
you follow these 4 steps, you can create great training for your team. So this is selling in the real world. This is driving top line sales because that's what your people do. And if you want to drive top line sales, your people must be properly trained, but you must be able to be realistic with your team. Take the fear out of it. Don't make them scripted. It sounds ridiculous. And don't let them not say, I don't know. They are
Mhm.
not going to come out of training an expert. And if you think they are, and you think they're going to come out of training just like you, and they're going to have all of your knowledge in 5 days, really process through that statement. And really,
Set
really
your own
think,
realistic expectations for sure. Yeah.
really think through that. So the next part that we're going to talk about, right, is that bottom line revenue. So we talked about one component of driving top line sales, but your disaster relief plan. Never be caught off guard. Expect the unexpected. Prepare for the worst. And you will achieve even in the face of adversity. So in my years, most of these I've seen firsthand, some I've heard, but we deal with fires, floods, sewage backups, gas line interruptions, power outages, roof leaks, mass walkouts, bomb threats, ice deportations of our entire line. You name it, I've seen it. And I often tell my people right now that if a dinosaur walked through my dining room tonight, I probably wouldn't flinch.
Yeah.
I'd be like, wow, cool. Maybe we should name them.
There you go. Put a shirt on them, give them an apron, walk them through some training.
So most people probably won't experience a lot of that in their career, and that's okay. I'm not saying you have to experience a fire or a flood or ice deportations to be able to manage a P&L. That's not what I'm trying to say. But what we are trying to talk about here is that the idea and concept of this is that one minute you're on track. You are on track to hit all your goals, and the next minute your P&L is in a tailspin. Something happened that you didn't expect,
Yep.
and you're not going to meet your goals.
Yep.
So it might not be a flood, but this is what we're going to ask ourselves. Do you know your controllables, you and your team, not just you, and financials well enough right now to manage through adversity? And are you flexible enough to understand that your plan might need to change to achieve success? Can
I
you
think,
adapt?
Lauren, that is so, so important, right? And so, I know you're talking about the frontline operations, and we had a colleague of ours, they have an offshore team in Ukraine. And when the war in Ukraine broke out 2 years ago now, like literally they were on Zoom calls with their team and there were bomb sirens going off in the background. Right. And so I think, what you're saying is super valuable. Whereas if we don't know what the world is going to throw at us, whether it's a world event or something happening in our environment, and this notion of being ready means that we can't have a complacent mindset and we can't have a complacent attitude. But I think what I also hear you saying is we're not always on the ready because we can't live at that hyper vigilant stage either. Right. And so can you talk a little about when you say, hey, being adaptable and being flexible, how do you kind of coach your people to flow through some of those motions?
Well, and this is honestly a great lead in to the next part, right?
I didn't even plan it.
I love it. So I think the biggest component to what you're talking about, you can't be on constant alert to your point, because then you're just like, anything can happen, and then it's just really weird. And just remember, like, all of your vibes get translated to your people, and it's icky.
Yeah.
But what we must do to be able to drive results and move through this ever-changing environment of our business is that we have to set clear goals for our team. We need to follow up with our team. But here's the key point to it all, right? This is what I'm going to tell everybody. Trust your team to make decisions. I'm going to say it again. Trust your team to make decisions.
Yep.
It's okay if it's not the decision you were going to make. It's okay if it turns into a learning moment, but you must trust your team. If you do not trust your team to make decisions in the face of adversity or on a day-to-day basis, when the time comes, they're not going to be able to.
Yep.
And they're going to be sitting there and they're going to be too afraid to do something in the face of adversity because they're going to be so afraid to disappoint their boss or so afraid that they're going to make the wrong decision that they're just going to do nothing. Mm-hmm. And doing nothing is worse,
yep.
right? Is
yep.
worse.
Yep.
So this is where setting goals with your team is super important. Be transparent, be aligned. If you are not writing goals at a high level, at the executive level, and then sharing that with your next level, and then sharing that with their next level so they can write their goals, you are not going to drive a successful business. Mm-hmm. You have to keep your team involved, and you have to let them know it's okay to make decisions.
Yeah, and I think too, Lauren, to that point, right? One of the other sessions we had James Bennett on talking about driving team connectedness, right? And what Lauren is talking about is like the hard and fast operationalize your stuff, right? And so many times we're not aware that maybe we're more of a strategic mind versus a tactical mind. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's recognizing what it is we're bringing to the table. And then what does my team need from me? And I may not be able to help them, right? But I need to be able to figure out how to give them direction, right? So I love, Lauren, what you're talking about as far as that alignment. It doesn't happen. People are afraid of it. And we think maybe we're going to screw it up, right? Or maybe my team, they're going to feel like I'm micromanaging them. And I don't think that's the case. So thoughts on that, and then I think keep going. So.
Well, and another big component too that I didn't touch on that was actually, I think, in the previous slide, is the number one question that I got, or I might be jumping, who knows, but the number one question I got from middle management when I was multi-unit and I was training and I'm traveling all over the country and I'm going to all these different states. And the number one question I got was that this middle management level of leaders wanted more. They wanted to understand the P&L more. They wanted to understand financials more. And it was just this blanket statement, right? They're like, I just want to understand more of the P&L. And I'm like, what part? What are top line, and here I am, an expert. Like at first I was kind of frustrated. I'm like, how do you not know, or what is it that you want to learn? But then I really took a step back and I'm like, wait a minute, this is where that like, it becomes this very aloof topic, like this very coveted topic almost amongst leaders. And we're clearly not sharing enough. And your middle management wants to know more.
Yep.
They want to know more. And oftentimes as high level leadership, we're not sharing enough.
Yep.
So I think training your team, trusting your team are two just very key components. And don't assume they just know. Financials are scary. And it's scary to be a mid-level manager and say you don't know financials, right? Like how terrifying is that to have to go to your boss and say like, and it shouldn't be scary. It should be like, hey, I want to understand this more. I want to understand this better. I want to own this metric, right? And that's what we do in frontline operations. We give each leader a portion of the P&L. And we're like, okay, drive labor. Labor is you, right? Drive it and find different ways to control it. And then again, trust your team to make those decisions and guide them.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I answered your question there, Dia.
I think so. So was it kind of more when people are like, hey, I giving you that blanket statement, I think what you were saying is it's incumbent upon us if we're leading our team or providing some of that training to seek to understand, right? If I had to use the Franklin Covey term is, okay, help me like peel back that layer of what are you trying to understand about your P&L? Because that statement is a broad, very broad statement and the specific. So they've identified the issue, but they're not specific around it. So it's really helping them drive to specifics.
Correct. And it's up to us as leaders to really guide that as well, right? And again, we're not talking about fires and floods and things like that, but like, it could be something as simple as your wine sales are down. And I had a wine manager and it was July and I read his goal and he's like, I'm gonna increase red wine sales by 8%. And I was like,
Not in July.
So then I said, okay, where are your wine sales at now? Oh, I don't know. I was
Oh,
like, I said, okay, what is your average wine sales for this restaurant? Oh, I don't know. I said, do you sell a lot of Cabernet in July? I said, like, and I'm just asking questions,
right.
right? And this is where training our team and keeping them aligned makes a difference,
Yep.
because when that adversity comes up or when you need to switch a plan, you have everybody involved in the plan and can
Yep.
actually work through it with you.
Yep. I love that.
Um, so that's, and I was a little surprised. I sat down with his boss and I was like, did you know that this was on his goals? Did you know that this was what he was trying to do? I mean, and like, how do you even measure success if you didn't know where you started? How do you even
Yep.
know where you're going to end?
Right.
like
Yep.
like there were so many missing pieces, but this is that idea of like, oh, my manager just know.
Yeah. Yep.
And oh, I told them to write their goals and they took care of it. They're
Right.
good. They're good. They're great people, and I'm sure they're very great people. But like, that's where we falter as leaders on financials and P&Ls, right? It's not a fun subject. I get it, right? Financials and all this crazy, gross to net
Right.
and labor and percentages. It gets a little dry, but it can be fun,
Yeah.
with dinosaurs and
I
stuff.
like the dinosaur. But I think too, Lauren, go ahead and you can advance your slides. And I think too, though, we're talking about maximizing your sales efforts, right? And so I think sometimes it's not about the number, it's about what we do with the number. And like you said, I want to grow, but do we know where we're starting from? Or do I know what goes into a number, right? It's the story behind the number and what we build around it. And sometimes to your point, we don't want to slow down to speed up.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And
And I
just being okay to change, right? Like
yeah,
being okay to change in the face of a change. Your plan isn't gonna just flow. I don't care what business you're in. You're gonna hit a speed bump. You're gonna have to turn. There is no point A to point B. Um, be adaptable, I
yeah,
think, is the biggest part too.
yeah.
And just be okay with it not going to plan. I think that's it too, right? Like,
Little
it's
flexibility.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't planning on a fire today, but we'll work through it. Here we go.
Yep,
you
I
know.
love that.
So the
I
last piece of this presentation is just using all your resources. So I early on in my career was asked to take over a kitchen. It was the worst kitchen in the company. They just fired the kitchen manager there. Our food cost was the highest in the company. We measure actual versus theoretical cost pretty regularly in the restaurant. That was out of control, highest in the company. Not only that, my team members were fighting on the line in front of guests, so that was super fun. Our culture was just broken to a level that I had never experienced before, and we were bleeding money left and right. It was out of control, and I had never ran a kitchen before ever. I was front of house. I was solely front of house. The president of the company, this was an ask directly from the president of my company that I take over this kitchen, because I had done some recovery and some front of house management positions. Now they wanted me to do it in the kitchen, so super fun. So what did I do? Right, like, holy bananas! Right, there was so much going on here, and we were losing money so fast. I had to think quickly, and I had to use all my resources. No resources too small. And it was just super important that I need to get the team informed. They had no idea that we were the worst in the company. They had no idea how bad it was. So I just started posting numbers. I did one-on-ones. I was transparent. I said, this is what we're losing every week. I gave them visuals. I was like, hey, roll all the meat in the cooler out to the dumpster and throw it away. That's what we lost. And all of a sudden, they're like, really? Is it really that bad? And here's just that component. We're going to switch from the management side to the hourly side of it, give people more credit.
yeah.
When you give them all this information, like, they are interested in it, regardless of what level they're at. So I used everything. I posted very complex reports every week on the wall, and they actually read it every single week. They came in, it was the first thing that they did. I posted lost in dollars to make an impact. When my prep cook over prepped, I threw it away. And I made them start over. So it hurt, but we were already bleeding. But I needed to train a new mindset, right? And you can't be afraid of that.
Yeah.
So at the same time I was training my team, I had to learn. I had to learn. I had to learn as quickly as they had to learn. So I used all my resources. I reached out to a mentor in the company. I did longhand math. on all the P&L reports. I wanted to know where the numbers came from. If I knew where the numbers came from and where these percentages were coming from, I'd have a better understanding of where I needed to make adjustments.
Yep.
And then I had to be okay making the right decision versus the comfortable decision. A lot of people don't understand the difference.
Yeah.
So the right decision here, I gave an example. I fired a prep cook who was a no-call, no-show, but it was going to push me into longer days. I was already pushing 12-hour days. Now I was going to be into 14, 15-hour days. But I was changing culture in this situation. So your culture is important. And if I allowed that, right? They say the worst behavior is the behavior that you tolerate is the culture
Yep.
you set.
Yep.
It was gonna be a problem. So I had to let him go. And that was making the right decision in this situation. So and that curated a really great sense of teamwork, to be honest, because people understood that I wanted people on the team that were going to be driving us to success. And I made mistakes, huge mistakes in the beginning. I was ordering trucks that were double what we needed, and we're talking food. I mean, this stuff just, if you don't use it, it's done. It's you can't recover it. So,
Yep.
um, so in the end of the story, we became very successful. We were the best kitchen in the company. The president came in, toured our kitchen, used our metrics as a company message of where we were and where we ended up. And we ended up driving revenue and driving bottom line sales at the end of the day. And I remember looking around. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I often got to work at 6 a.m. And it was all of a sudden like running on autopilot. My kitchen was running on autopilot. Everything was seamless. Everything. My numbers were in line. We did a full inventory every week. My team was getting along. They were laughing. They were enjoying. We hadn't had any issues in the last few weeks. And for the first time in 6 months, I realized I could go home. And I did. And it ran great.
Yep.
So just making sure that you don't use your resources. Don't feel like you have to go it alone. By getting my team involved, I wasn't alone in this situation. And they were gradually able to ease some of that pressure off of me, but I didn't drive those numbers. And I think as leaders, we have to remember that. I don't drive numbers in my building. I don't drive numbers in my kitchen. My team drives numbers.
Yep.
My team is driving the success of that business.
Yep.
We're just simply steering them on a direction. If we don't give them any direction, they're just nobody's at the helm.
Yep.
They're just gonna be lost at sea. And I
Yep.
think that's what happened to this kitchen. We were just lost at sea and we weren't doing anything. But the minute I started giving them dollars and resources and reports, they were looking at it without me asking it. It was in How to Win Friends and Influence People, I believe. He came in with a
Yep.
number on the floor.
Yep.
I did that recently in another tactic. All I did was post numbers. I didn't tell them they had to read it. I didn't tell them what the number, I just posted it. And I just said, here you go. And I walked away. And slowly but surely, they all lined up. And they wanted to drive those numbers. Nobody wants to be the first.
Yeah, absolutely, Lauren. I think that's amazing. And I think too, what you're talking about is as a leader, sometimes we overfunction, right? Or underfunction. And finding
Yeah.
that flow and sweet spot is difficult, right? And so to your point, like don't go it alone. No, find that flow that your team needs. Ask, right? Post the numbers, get everybody involved. When people are involved, it's a lot harder to be ambivalent. So I love that
100%.
message and 100% agree. And you've covered a lot of ground with a lot of really good points and some deep, deep, deep knowledge. So go ahead and take us through your wrap up.
So yeah, there is a lot there. But I think at the end of the day, if you just focus on, if you just look at it as like selling and training appropriately, right? Being okay to change course if you need to on your plans and on your goals, and trusting your team and training your team and not letting goals and P&Ls run on autopilot. It's the worst thing you can do, right? You just don't assume people are just showing up, clocking in and doing, what they need to be doing. Make sure you have the right people in the right places doing the right things, and always be monitoring. I had a high level CEO guy come into my restaurant guy, CEO guy, high CEO guy.
It's okay. We do things all day. It's all good.
So he came in. He's like, "Wow, it's a little slow today." And I was like, "Oh," I said, "Well, there's a fair in town. We have a pretty pretty good, Thursday night football game on, and we're going to probably be heading into a 3-day weekend here. So, folks are probably going to be going up north. And so we kind of have a trifecta going on. And the CEO looked at me and he's like, "You really think about that every day?" He's like, "I had no idea you were that in tune." And I said, "Well, you have to be.
Yes.
You have to be that tuned in.
Yes.
Because if I just say, oh, I've got people staffed and I'm good to go, and I walk away, one extra person could drive you into the negative.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, like, it's just, you have to be that in tune. I was actually pretty shocked at that. So I think it's just about staying in tune with your people and your P&L, using all your resources. Don't do it alone, and really learn how to train your team realistically and set realistic expectations. And that's what selling in the real world worksheet will do for you. So if you register, you can use that. It's going to take you through a deep dive into how you can write that training fairly easily. And then coming soon to a website near you, I guess, right? So look out for the new Human Element course. Inside Sales by Design is excited to launch this course. Course 101, First Impressions, is going to be the first one up on the site. Very excited about this. So we're going to deep dive the human element of our business, how that drives top line revenue, or top line sales and bottom line revenue, in the consumer perspective and the team members perspective. So it's all about people at the end of the day. And I think we touched on that a lot during this
Yeah, absolutely.
webinar as well.
I love it. Lauren, thank you for presenting. So everybody, as you have registered for this course, the free giveaway we have for you is the worksheet that Lauren's designed that goes with this presentation. So if you registered, you will get that automatically. If you would like a copy of this presentation, please go ahead and email Lauren or myself. We'll make sure you get that. And then if you are interested in staying ahead with updates for the new course coming, plus some of the other courses we have, make sure that you subscribe to our blog on Inside Sales by Design, and or email us directly, or subscribe to our LinkedIn page, right? Just, we've got 1,000 ways, like everybody else these days, to make sure you don't miss out on information. So, but make sure you're opting into that so we don't violate your space. So thank you for joining us. Lauren, how should everybody get in touch with you?
Through the website and through through LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
To message me on LinkedIn. Sorry, I was caught a little off guard there.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Definitely network with me on LinkedIn, and I will also be posting things on Inside Sales and things like that. So
absolutely. Thank you, everybody. We hope you found some nuggets. Thank you for joining us. We purposely, on a side note, if you need to drop, go ahead, but we purposely really walk through a lot of the verbal components of this presentation, because we know a lot of people maybe listen to webinars when they're walking and stuff, right? I do it all the time. So I get kind of frustrated when slides have pictures and no verbal behind it. Plus, we want to be inclusive for our DEI friends, right? So not everybody can be in front of a computer and or read, or not even read, but have visual capabilities, right? So we want to be mindful of that. We want to make sure we're supporting everybody in their walks of life. So thank you so much for joining. We appreciate all of you, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Bye, everybody.